cloaked figure slips through the moonlit cloister, leaving a trail of blood and a silent scream that echoes through a sacred abbey. Welcome to The Silent Cloister, a Poirot mystery in shadows, where secrets unravel in the holiest of places. Grab a cup of tea, take a seat, and dive into this chilling tale. If it grips you, hit that subscribe button. Your support means everything to us. Chapter 1. The Midnight Bell Inn, the heart of rural Belgium. Nestled among rolling hills and ancient forests, stood the Abbey of Saint Benoit, a centuries-old sanctuary of stone and silence. Its weathered walls, cloaked in ivy, held the prayers of monks who had long dedicated their lives to solitude and devotion. It was here, on a moonless night in 1934, that our story begins, with the tolling of the midnight bell echoing through the cloister's arches. The monks, roused from their simple cots, shuffled in their coarse robes toward the chapel for nocturnal prayers, their sandals whispering against the cold flagstones. Among them was Brother Anselm, a young monk known for his gentle demeanor and skill with illuminated manuscripts, his quill often seen dancing across parchment in the scriptorium. But tonight his cot was empty, and a faint, metallic scent lingered in the air, a scent that would soon draw the attention of Hercule Poirot, the famed detective whose little grey cells were about to face a most perplexing puzzle. The Abbey's prior, Father Dominic, a stern man with eyes like polished flint, noticed Anselm's absence as the monks knelt in the candle-lit chapel, his brow furrowed. But he dismissed it, assuming the young monk was tending to some minor duty, perhaps checking the library's ancient tomes or repairing a candle sconce. Yet, as the prayers ended and the monks returned to their cells, a cry shattered the sacred silence. It came from Brother Matthias, an elderly monk with trembling hands, who had stumbled upon a dark pool staining the cloister's stone path. "Blood!" he gasped, his voice echoing off the arches. The monks gathered, their faces pale in the flickering torchlight, as Father Dominic pushed through, his robes sweeping the ground. There, beneath a stone statue of Saint Benoit, lay a single bloodied sandal, its leather strap torn as if wrenched in a struggle. Of Brother Anselm, there was no sign, only a trail of crimson droplets leading toward the Abbey's locked gate. Father Dominic, his composure strained, ordered the monks to search the grounds. The Abbey, surrounded by high walls and dense woods, was a fortress of solitude, its only entrance secured by a heavy iron gate, the key kept in the prior's cell. Brother Luke, the gatekeeper, swore it had been locked all night, and no one had passed through. The search yielded nothing. No body, no further clues, just the sandal and the blood, which stopped abruptly at the gate as if the trail had vanished into the night air. The monks whispered of curses or divine wrath, their faith tested by the unnatural scene. Father Dominic, unwilling to let panic spread, sent for the local constable, but he knew the village's bumbling officer was no match for such a mystery. Instead, he penned a letter to Hercule Poirot, who was vacationing nearby in Brussels, having solved a case involving a stolen diamond. Poirot's reputation for unravelling the impossible had reached even the cloistered walls of Saint Benoit. Poirot arrived by noon, his polished shoes incongruous against the Abbey's rough stones, his moustache impeccably waxed despite the urgency of the summons. With him came Captain Hastings, his loyal friend, whose practical mind often grounded Poirot's flights of brilliance. "Mon ami," Poirot said, surveying the cloister with sharp eyes. "This is a place of peace, yet it hides a violence most disturbing. A monk does not vanish, leaving blood and a sandal, without a story." Hastings nodded, his gaze lingering on the statue of Saint Benoit, its serene face seeming to mock the chaos below. Father Dominic greeted them, his hands clasped tightly. "Monsieur Poirot, we are a simple order." Brother Anselm was devout, quiet, no enemies. This is unthinkable." Poirot tilted his head, his eyes gleaming. Unthinkable perhaps, but not impossible. The little grey cells, they will find order in this disorder. A monk does not vanish, leaving blood in a sandal without a story. Hastings nodded, his gaze lingering on the statue of Saint Benoit, its serene face seeming to mock the chaos below. Father Dominic greeted them, his hands clasped tightly. Monsieur Poirot, we are a simple order. Brother Anselm was devout, quiet, no enemies. This is unthinkable. Poirot tilted his head, his eyes gleaming. Unthinkable perhaps, but not impossible. The little grey cells, they will find order in this disorder. As the sun dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows through the cloister, Poirot requested to see Anselm's cell. The small room was sparse. A cot, a wooden cross, and a desk with quills and parchment. On the desk lay an unfinished manuscript, its intricate lettering half complete. Poirot's fingers traced the page, pausing at a smudged word. Sin, written in haste, unlike Anselm's usual precision. This, Poirot said, is where we begin. A monk's life is simple, but his secrets are not. The abbey's silence felt heavier now, as if guarding a truth just out of reach. In the next chapter, we'll follow Poirot as he delves into the lives of the monks, uncovering whispers of envy and hidden motives that point to a darker truth. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Scriptorium. The Abbey of Saint Benoit stood silent under a grey afternoon sky, its ancient stones seeming to absorb the unease that rippled through its halls. Hercule Poirot, his sharp eyes missing nothing, moved through the cloister with Captain Hastings at his side, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. The bloodied sandal and the smudged manuscript in Brother Anselm's cell had sparked Poirot's curiosity, hinting at a secret that had turned a holy sanctuary into a stage for violence. Determined to understand the monk's world, Poirot requested to visit the scriptorium, where Anselm had spent his days illuminating manuscripts. The room, he reasoned, might hold clues to the young monk's life, and what had drawn him into danger. The scriptorium was a long, vaulted chamber, its high windows casting pale light on rows of wooden desks, each cluttered with parchment, quills, and pots of ink. The air smelled of vellum and wax, and the faint scratching of pens filled the space as a handful of monks worked in silence. Brother Jerome, a wiry man with ink-stained fingers and a perpetually furrowed brow, oversaw the room, his sharp voice correcting a younger monk's lettering. When Poirot and Hastings entered, the monks glanced up, their expressions a mix of curiosity and wariness. Father Dominic, who had joined them, introduced Poirot with a strained smile. Brother Jerome, Monsieur Poirot is here to help us find Brother Anselm. Please assist him. Jerome's lips tightened, but he nodded, setting down his quill. Poirot began by examining Anselm's desk, positioned near a window overlooking the cloister. The desk was tidy, save for a small stack of completed manuscripts, their margins adorned with delicate gold leaf and vivid blues. A single candle stub, its wax dripped onto the wood, caught Poirot's eye. This candle, he said, holding it up to Hastings, is not like the others. It is smaller, cheaper, not the Abbey's usual supply. Hastings frowned, peering at it. Perhaps Anselm brought it himself. Poirot shook his head. A monk with vows of poverty does not buy candles. None, this came from elsewhere. He turned to Brother Jerome, who hovered nearby. Did Brother Anselm work late here, perhaps by candlelight? Jerome's eyes flickered. Sometimes. He was dedicated, always perfecting his work. But he kept strange hours lately, staying after the others left. Sensing reticence, Poirot shifted his approach, strolling among the desks and asking about Anselm's habits. Brother Luke, the gatekeeper, a broad-shouldered man with a nervous tic, spoke up hesitantly. He was quiet, monsieur, but restless. I saw him pacing the cloister at night, muttering to himself. Once, I heard him say something about forgiveness and a debt unpaid. I thought he was praying. Poirot's moustache twitched, But he said nothing, filing the detail away. He moved to a shelf where manuscripts were stored, noticing a small locked box tucked behind a stack of vellum. "And this?" he asked, pointing. Jerome stiffened. "That's where we keep special inks. Gold, vermilion. Only I have the key." Poirot nodded, but his eyes lingered on the box, suspecting it held more than ink. Leaving the scriptorium, Poirot and Hastings walked to the Abbey's garden, a quiet space of herbs and roses bordered by a low stone wall. The air was sharp with the scent of thyme, and Poirot paused to think, his hands clasped behind his back. "Hastings, mon ami, this abbey is a place of order." Yet Anselm was disordered, pacing, muttering, working by a strange candle. He was hiding something or seeking it. Hastings kicked a pebble, his brow creased. "But what? He's a monk, not a spy. And that blood! Someone attacked him, surely." Poirot's eyes gleamed. Perhaps the blood is a distraction meant to mislead. We must learn more about Anselm's life before the Abbey. Their conversation was interrupted by Brother Matthias, the elderly monk who had found the sandal. He approached, leaning on a stick, his eyes clouded with worry. "Monsieur Poirot, I must speak. Anselm, he came to me a week ago, asking about a visitor who'd been turned away at the gate. A woman, cloaked, refusing to give her name. He seemed troubled, said she spoke of his past." Poirot's interest sharpened. "A woman? Did he say more?" Matthias shook his head, only that he feared she'd return. "I told him to trust in prayer, but he looked haunted." As Matthias shuffled away, Poirot turned to Hastings. "A woman from his past, a locked box, a candle not from the Abbey. These are threads, Hastings, and they weave a pattern." The garden grew dim as clouds gathered overhead, mirroring the thickening mystery. Poirot knew the scriptorium held secrets beyond its manuscripts, and the woman's visit suggested Anselm's life before his vows was not as buried as he'd hoped. In the next chapter, we'll follow Poirot as he uncovers a hidden connection in Anselm's past, drawing him closer to the truth behind the bloodied sandal and the silent cloister. Chapter 3. Echoes of a Former Life. The Abbey of Saint-Benoît stood like a sentinel in the fading light of late afternoon, its stone walls casting long shadows across the cloister's flagstones. Hercule Poirot, his mind buzzing with the clues, from the scriptorium, the cheap candle, the locked box, and Brother Matthias's tale of a mysterious woman, felt the mystery of Brother Anselm's disappearance deepening. The young monk's restlessness and cryptic words about a debt unpaid suggested a past that had followed him into the Abbey's sanctity. Determined to uncover who Anselm had been before his vows, Poirot resolved to speak with Father Dominic, whose authority over the monks might yield insights into Anselm's history. With Captain Hastings trailing behind, his face a mix of curiosity and confusion, Poirot navigated the Abbey's labyrinthine corridors toward the prior's private study, where the air was thick with the scent of old books and beeswax. Father Dominic sat at a heavy oak desk, his fingers steepled, his expression guarded as Poirot and Hastings entered. The room was austere, with a single crucifix on the wall and a narrow window overlooking the misty hills. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice low, "I trust your inquiries are bearing fruit. The monks grow anxious, and I fear this disruption threatens our peace." Poirot inclined his head, his moustache perfectly symmetrical. "Peace, Father, is often a facade when secrets linger. Brother Anselm, I understand, was not always a monk. What can you tell me of his life before he came to Saint-Benoît?" Dominic's eyes flickered, but he leaned back, choosing his words carefully. "Anselm joined us 5 years ago, a young man seeking redemption. He spoke little of his past, only that he was orphaned in Liège and had lived a wayward life. We ask no more of those who take our vows. Poirot's gaze sharpened, sensing evasion. Wayward, you say? Yet a woman visited, seeking him, and he spoke of debts and forgiveness. Did he ever confide in you about such matters? Dominic's hands tightened, his knuckles pale. He mentioned no woman, but Anselm was, troubled at times. He sought confession often, speaking of guilt, though he never named its source. I assumed it was the weight of his former sins. Hastings, standing by the window, couldn't resist interjecting. Sins. Sounds like he was running from something, or someone. That woman, perhaps. Poirot shot him a glance, silencing him, then turned back to Dominic. And did he receive letters, visitors, anything that might connect to this past? The prior hesitated, then opened a drawer, producing a small sealed envelope. This arrived for him a month ago. I held it, as per our rules, but he never claimed it. Poirot took the envelope, noting its worn edges and a postmark from Liège. Inside was a single sheet, written in a hurried scrawl. You cannot hide forever. The debt must be paid. Meet me at the old mill. No signature, but the paper smelled faintly of lavender, a scent uncommon for a monk's correspondence. Poirot's eyes gleamed. This, father, is no ordinary letter. It is a summons, perhaps a threat. He tucked it into his pocket, his mind racing. The old mill, he recalled, was a crumbling ruin a mile from the abbey, hidden in the woods. Had Anselm gone there, meeting the woman, or someone else, before his disappearance? Leaving the study, Poirot and Hastings ventured to the abbey's library, a cavernous room lined with ancient tomes and illuminated by flickering lamps. Brother Jerome, the scriptorium's overseer, was there, cataloguing manuscripts. Poirot, sensing his earlier unease, approached with disarming courtesy. Brother Jerome, you knew Anselm well, working side by side. Did he ever speak of Liège, or a woman from his past? Jerome's quill paused, his eyes darting to the locked box on the shelf. He mentioned Liège once, said he'd left it to escape trouble. But women? No, he was devout, focused on his work. Yet his voice wavered, and Poirot pressed gently. And this box, does it hold only inks, or perhaps something Anselm left behind? Jerome flushed, fumbling with his keys. Just inks, monsieur, nothing more. But as he opened the box, a small leather pouch slipped out, embossed with the initials A.V., Anselm's, perhaps from his former life. Inside the pouch was a locket, tarnished but intricate, containing a faded photograph of a young woman with dark hair and a wistful smile. Poirot held it to the light, his mind connecting the lavender-scented letter to this hidden keepsake. This, he said to Hastings, is a piece of Anselm's heart, kept secret even here. Jerome, visibly shaken, admitted, I saw him hide it months ago. He said it was a reminder of his sins, but he wouldn't explain. As they left the library, the abbey's bell tolled, signalling vespers. But Poirot's thoughts were elsewhere. The woman, the letter, the locket. They pointed to a life Anselm had tried to bury, one that had caught up with him in the cloister's shadows. The evening mist rolled in, cloaking the abbey in mystery. Poirot knew the old mill was the next step, a place where secrets might have spilled alongside blood. In the next chapter, we'll follow him as he ventures beyond the abbey walls, uncovering a startling link to Anselm's past that brings the silent cloister's truth into focus. Chapter 4. The Ruins of the Old Mill. The dawn broke over the Abbey of Saint-Benoît with a pale, watery light, filtering through the dense woods that surrounded the ancient structure. Hercule Poirot, his coat buttoned against the morning chill, stood at the Abbey's iron gate, the lavender-scented letter and the locket from Anselm's past burning in his mind. The mention of the old mill in the letter, a crumbling relic hidden in the forest, beckoned as the next piece of the puzzle. Whatever had drawn Brother Anselm from the safety of the cloister, it was tied to that forsaken place, and Poirot was determined to uncover it. Captain Hastings, ever loyal but slightly apprehensive, adjusted his scarf as they set out, the crunch of leaves underfoot the only sound in the still air. The mystery of the bloodied sandal and the vanished monk was closing in, and the mill, Poirot sensed, held answers shrouded in its decay. The path to the mill wound through tangled undergrowth, the trees looming like silent sentinels. The air grew damp, carrying the faint scent of moss and rot as they approached the ruins, its broken stone walls choked with ivy. The mill's wheel, long stilled, sagged into a sluggish stream, and the roof had collapsed in places, exposing beams to the sky. Poirot's sharp eyes scanned the scene, noting the uneven ground, where fresh footprints mingled with older ruts. "Hastings, mon ami," he said, pointing to a patch of mud. "These marks are recent. 2 sets, one smaller, perhaps a woman's." Hastings crouched, his brow furrowed. "So, Anselm met someone here. Maybe the woman from the letter. But where's the blood?" Poirot gestured to a shadowed corner of the mill, where a pile of leaves concealed a dark stain on the stone floor. Dried blood, unmistakable in its rusty hue. Kneeling, Poirot examined the stain, his gloved fingers tracing its edges. Nearby, a torn piece of cloth, coarse like a monk's robe, lay caught in a splintered beam. "This," he said, holding it up, "is from Anselm's habit, I wager. But the blood is not as much as one would expect from a fatal wound." He stood, his gaze sweeping the mill's interior. A rusted axe, a broken crate, and a small wooden door leading to a cellar. The door was ajar, its hinges creaking as Poirot pushed it open. A narrow staircase descended into darkness, the air heavy with mildew. Hastings hesitated, but Poirot, undeterred, lit a small lantern from his pocket and led the way, his steps careful on the uneven steps. The cellar was a damp, cavernous space, its walls slick with moisture. At its centre stood a makeshift table, strewn with papers and a single candle, its wax matching the stub from Anselm's desk. Poirot's heart quickened as he lifted a sheet, a letter, written in the same hurried scrawl as the one from Liège, but this one was addressed to Anselm by name. "You swore to make it right," it read. "The truth is in the Abbey. Bring it to me or I tell all." The signature was a single initial, M. Poirot's moustache twitched. "This M is our mystery woman, Hastings. She knew Anselm's secrets and demanded something from him, perhaps proof of a wrong from his past." Hastings, peering over his shoulder, pointed to a small leather-bound book tucked beneath the papers. "What's that? A diary?" Poirot opened the book, its pages filled with Anselm's tight script. It detailed his life before the Abbey. A youth in Liège, entangled with a woman named Marguerite, who had been wronged by a wealthy merchant. Anselm, then called Antoine Vasseur, had been her confidant, promising to help her seek justice, but he fled to the Abbey when the merchant's threats grew too dangerous. The final entry, dated days before his disappearance, read, "She has found me. I must face her, or the past will destroy us both." Poirot closed the book, his mind racing. Marguerite, the woman in the locket, had tracked Anselm to Saint-Benoît, and their meeting at the mill had ended in violence or a staged escape. As they climbed back to the mill's main floor, a rustle in the woods made Hastings spin, his hand on his pocket. "Who's there?" he called, but only silence answered. Poirot, however, noticed a fresh cigarette butt near the entrance, its tobacco foreign to the Abbey's simple ways. Someone watches Hastings, he murmured, pocketing the butt. Perhaps Marguerite, or another who knows what happened here. The mill's ruins seemed to close in around them, their secrets half revealed. Anselm had met Marguerite, but had he fled, been taken, or worse? The blood, the cloth, and the diary pointed to a confrontation, but the absence of a body kept the truth elusive. The forest grew darker as they retraced their steps to the abbey, the weight of the diary and letter heavy in Poirot's satchel. Marguerite was the key, and her connection to Anselm's past held the motive for his disappearance. In the next chapter, we'll follow Poirot as he seeks out this mysterious woman, uncovering a revelation that ties the silent Cloister's shadows to a long-buried betrayal. Chapter 5. The Woman in the Woods. The twilight draped the woods around the Abbey of Saint-Benoît in a veil of soft shadows, the air sharp with the scent of pine and damp earth. Hercule Poirot, his mind alight with the discoveries from the old mill. The bloodstain, the torn robe, and Anselm's diary revealing his past as Antoine Vasseur, felt the mystery drawing him beyond the abbey's walls. The woman named Marguerite, whose locket and letter hinted at a shared history with Anselm, was the thread he needed to follow. The cigarette butt found at the mill, its tobacco foreign to the monks' austere lives, suggested someone else had been there, perhaps watching or waiting. With Captain Hastings by his side, his face etched with unease at the darkening forest, Poirot set out for the village of Saint-Benoît, a cluster of stone cottages a mile from the abbey, where whispers of a cloaked woman might lead to answers. The village was quiet, its narrow streets lit by flickering lamps as shopkeepers closed for the day. Poirot headed for the local inn, Le Cerf Blanc, a low-beamed building where travellers often lingered over strong coffee and stronger gossip. The innkeeper, Madame Lefebvre, a stout woman with keen eyes, greeted them with a nod, wiping her hands on her apron. Monsieur Poirot, a rare visit. What brings you to our humble village? Poirot's moustache curved slightly as he leaned in, his voice low. Madame, I seek a woman, perhaps a stranger, who may have passed through recently. Dark-haired, cloaked, possibly from Liège, with a connection to a monk named Anselm. Madame Lefebvre's brow arched, and she beckoned them to a corner table, away from the few patrons nursing their drinks. A woman like that stayed here a week ago, she said, her voice hushed. Called herself Marguerite Dubois, kept to herself, paid in cash, and left early each morning, always toward the woods. She asked about the abbey, said she had business with a monk but wouldn't say more. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And did she leave anything behind, madame? A letter, perhaps, or an object? The innkeeper hesitated, then retrieved a small parcel from behind the counter. A silk scarf, embroidered with the initial M, and scented faintly with lavender. She left this in her room. I meant to send it after her, but she gave no address. Poirot examined the scarf, its delicate stitches matching the elegance of the locket's photograph. This is hers, he murmured to Hastings. Marguerite is close, and she holds the key to Anselm's fate, leaving the inn. Poirot and Hastings followed Madame Lefebvre's directions to a narrow trail leading deeper into the woods, where villagers had seen a cloaked figure at dusk. The path was overgrown, branches snagging at their coats, but Poirot's determination was unshaken. Near a clearing, they found a small campfire, its embers still warm, surrounded by trampled grass, and another cigarette butt identical to the one at the mill. Someone keeps watch, Poirot said, his voice low. Perhaps Marguerite, or an accomplice. As they searched the clearing, Hastings spotted a glint in the underbrush, a small knife, its blade stained with dried blood. Poirot lifted it carefully, noting its ornate handle, unlike the abbey's simple tools. This, he said, is no monk's blade. It belongs to someone with means and motive. A rustle broke the silence, and Poirot turned to see a figure slip behind a tree. A woman, her cloak catching the moonlight. Madame Dubois, he called, his voice firm but calm. The figure froze, then stepped into the clearing, revealing a woman in her 30s, her dark hair framing a pale, defiant face. "You know my name, monsieur," she said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "But you don't know why I'm here." Poirot inclined his head, his eyes never leaving hers. "Then enlighten me, madame. You sought Brother Anselm, once Antoine Vasseur, about a debt from Liège. Did you meet him at the mill, and did it end in blood?" Marguerite's eyes flashed, but she didn't flee. "Antoine owed me justice," she said. "Years ago, he promised to expose the merchant who ruined my family, but he ran to the abbey instead. I found him, demanded he bring me proof. He met me at the mill, but someone else came. Someone who wanted us both silenced." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Marguerite described a shadowed figure interrupting their meeting, a man with a low voice and a glint of steel. Anselm had pushed her to run, cutting his hand in the struggle, explaining the blood and torn robe. "I fled," she admitted, "but Antoine didn't follow. I've been hiding, waiting for a sign he's alive." Poirot's mind raced, connecting the knife to the cigarette butts and the merchant from Anselm's diary. Was this third figure the true threat, lurking in the abbey's orbit? He thanked Marguerite, urging her to stay at the inn for safety, and promised to find Anselm. As they trekked back to the village, the woods seemed to whisper with secrets. The knife, the cigarette butts, and Marguerite's story pointed to a new player in this drama. One who had tracked Anselm from Liège to Saint-Benoît. In the next chapter, we'll follow Poirot as he returns to the abbey, uncovering a hidden truth within its walls that brings him closer to the silent cloister's darkest mystery. Chapter 6. The Merchant's Shadow. The morning mist clung to the woods surrounding the abbey of Saint-Benoît, wrapping the ancient stones in a ghostly haze as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings returned from their encounter with Marguerite Dubois. The woman's tale of a shadowy figure interrupting her meeting with Brother Anselm at the old mill, coupled with the blood-stained knife and foreign cigarette butts, had shifted the mystery's focus. Someone else was involved, someone tied to Anselm's past in Liège and the merchant who had wronged Marguerite's family. Poirot's little grey cells hummed with possibilities, and he knew the answers lay within the abbey's walls, where secrets hid among the monks' prayers. Determined to uncover the identity of this third figure, Poirot headed for the abbey's archive, a repository of records that might reveal more about Anselm's life before his vows. The archive was a dim, dusty chamber beneath the chapel, its shelves sagging under the weight of leather-bound volumes and parchment scrolls. Brother Luke, the gatekeeper, led them down the stone steps, his broad shoulders hunched as if burdened by more than his duties. "The records go back centuries, Monsieur Poirot," he said, lighting a lamp that cast flickering shadows on the walls. "What do you hope to find?" Poirot's eyes gleamed as he scanned the shelves. "The past, Brother Luke. Brother Anselm's past, to be precise. A man does not flee to an abbey without leaving traces." Hastings, trailing behind, muttered, "All this dust. Hope it's worth it, Poirot." But Poirot was already pulling a ledger marked with the year Anselm joined the abbey. 5 years prior, the ledger listed new monks, their former names and their reasons for taking vows. Under Anselm it read, "Antoine Vasseur, formerly of Liège, seeks atonement for sins of youth." A note in Father Dominic's hand added, "Recommended by Monsieur Henri Duval, merchant of Liège." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Duval, this is the merchant from Anselm's diary, the one who wronged Marguerite's family. His influence reached even here, securing Anselm's place." He turned to Luke, who shifted uncomfortably under his gaze. "Did you know Anselm before he came here, Brother Luke? Perhaps through this Duval?" Luke's tick twitched, his eyes darting to the floor. "No, monsieur. I only met him when he arrived. He was quiet, kept to his work." Sensing evasion, Poirot pressed further, his voice soft but probing. And yet you saw him pacing the cloister, speaking of debts. Did he ever mention a merchant or a woman named Marguerite? Luke's hands clenched, and after a moment he sighed. Once, in the garden, he spoke of a man in Liège who ruined lives for profit. Said he'd tried to stop him but failed. I told him to let it go, that the abbey was his sanctuary. Poirot nodded. Filing away the confirmation of Duval's role, he turned to another shelf, finding a bundle of letters tied with twine. Correspondence between the abbey and its benefactors. One, dated a month ago, was from Henri Duval, requesting news of Brother Anselm's welfare and enclosing a donation. The paper bore a faint tobacco scent, matching the cigarette butts from the mill and woods. Poirot's heart quickened. This Duval, he is no distant benefactor. He has been close, perhaps watching Anselm. He showed the letter to Hastings, who frowned. So this merchant tracked Anselm here? Why now, after years? Poirot's eyes narrowed. Because Marguerite stirred the past, mon ami. She sought Anselm, and Duval followed, fearing exposure of his crimes. Leaving the archive, Poirot requested to see Father Dominic again, but the prior was in the chapel, leading midday prayers. Instead, Poirot and Hastings slipped into the cloister, where Brother Jerome was sweeping the flagstones near the blood-stained spot. "Brother Jerome," Poirot called, his tone disarming. "You oversee the scriptorium where Anselm worked. Did he ever receive visitors? Perhaps a man of means, not a monk?" Jerome's broom paused, his face tightening. "A man came once, a month back, in a fine coat. Said he was a donor, but he spoke to Anselm alone in the garden. Anselm was shaken after, wouldn't say why." Poirot exchanged a glance with Hastings. This matched Duval's letter and the cigarette butts. A man of wealth, trailing Anselm. But had Duval confronted Anselm at the mill, wielding the bloodied knife? Or was Anselm still alive, hiding from his pursuer? As the chapel bell tolled, Poirot stood in the cloister, the bloodstain at his feet. The merchant Henri Duval was the shadow in this mystery, his presence linking the abbey, the mill, and Marguerite's vengeance. But the absence of Anselm's body kept the truth elusive. Poirot needed to find Duval, or proof of his actions, before the silent cloister claimed another secret. In the next chapter, we'll follow Poirot as he tracks this merchant's trail, uncovering a confrontation that reveals the heart of Anselm's disappearance. Chapter 7. The Merchant's Trail. The sun climbed higher over the Abbey of Saint-Benoît, its rays piercing the morning mist, but failing to dispel the tension that hung over the ancient cloister. Hercule Poirot, his mind sharpened by the archive's revelations, the merchant Henri Duval's letter, the tobacco-scented paper, and Brother Jerome's account of a wealthy visitor, knew the mystery of Brother Anselm's disappearance was nearing a critical turn. Duval, the merchant from Liège, who had wronged Marguerite's family and secured Anselm's place in the abbey, was no mere shadow. He was a tangible threat, likely the figure behind the bloodied knife at the old mill. Determined to trace Duval's movements, Poirot decided to venture back to the village of Saint-Benoît, where the merchant might have left traces at Le Cerf Blanc or among the locals. Captain Hastings, his face set with determination despite the early hour, followed closely, muttering about the complexity of monks and merchants. At Le Cerf Blanc, the inn buzzed with midday activity, villagers gathering for lunch and gossip. Madame Lefebvre, wiping down a table, brightened at Poirot's return. "Monsieur Poirot, back so soon? Have you found your missing monk?" Poirot's moustache twitched as he leaned in, his voice low to avoid eager ears. "Not yet, madame, but I seek a man. Henri Duval, a merchant from Liège, perhaps a recent guest or visitor. He may have asked about the abbey or Brother Anselm." Madame Lefebvre's eyes widened, and she nodded, gesturing to a ledger behind the counter. "Duval, you say? A gentleman by that name stayed here 3 weeks ago. Fine clothes, smoked those strong cigarettes, left a stink in the room. He paid well, but asked odd questions about the abbey's schedule, like when the monks prayed or left the grounds." Poirot examined the ledger, noting Duval's signature in bold, looping script, dated just before Anselm's disappearance. A small sketch in the margin, a crude map of the Abbey's woods, caught his eye. "This," he said to Hastings, "is no coincidence. Duval was planning, watching." Madame Lefebvre added, "He left suddenly, same day that woman, Marguerite, checked out. I saw him in the square talking to a man with a cart headed toward Liège." Poirot thanked her, his mind racing. Duval had been in the village, close to the mill, when Anselm vanished. The cigarette butts, the knife, and now this map pointed to a man orchestrating events from the shadows. Leaving the inn, Poirot and Hastings followed the trail to the village square, where a market bustled with vendors selling bread, cheese, and wool. Poirot approached a grizzled carter, his horse-drawn cart laden with barrels, who matched Madame Lefebvre's description. "Monsieur," Poirot began, his tone courteous, "did you recently drive a man named Henri Duval toward Liège?" The carter, chewing a straw, squinted at him. "Aye, a city gent. Paid me to take him to a warehouse just outside Liège. Smoked like a chimney, he did, and kept looking back, like someone was after him." Poirot pressed further. "Did he carry anything unusual? Papers, perhaps? Or a weapon?" The carter scratched his chin. "Had a satchel, bulging with something, documents maybe, and a knife, fancy one, tucked in his belt. Didn't like the look of him, truth be told." The warehouse in Liège was the next lead, but Poirot knew returning to the Abbey was crucial first, to confront Father Dominic about Duval's influence. Back at Saint-Benoît, the cloister was quiet, the monks at their midday meal. Poirot found Father Dominic in his study, his face etched with strain. "Monsieur Poirot, have you news?" he asked, his hands clasped tightly. Poirot's eyes were unyielding. "I have questions, Father. Henri Duval, a merchant, secured Anselm's place here. Did he visit recently, perhaps to ensure Anselm's silence about a past wrong?" Dominic's face paled, but he shook his head. "He came once as a benefactor. I knew nothing of his dealings with Anselm." Poirot produced the letter from the archive, its tobacco scent unmistakable. "This suggests otherwise. Duval was here, watching, and I believe he met Anselm at the mill, where blood was spilled." Dominic's composure faltered, his voice dropping. "Anselm confessed to me, days before he vanished, about a merchant who ruined a family in Liège. He said he'd hidden proof, letters, in the scriptorium's locked box, to expose him. I urged him to let it go, but he was determined." Poirot's heart quickened. The locked box, which Brother Jerome guarded, held more than inks. It held Anselm's evidence against Duval. Rushing to the scriptorium, Poirot demanded Jerome open the box. Inside, beneath vials of gold ink, was a bundle of letters, written by Marguerite's father, detailing Duval's fraud that bankrupted their family. Anselm's notes in the margins outlined his plan to deliver them to Marguerite, fulfilling his old promise. As the Abbey's bell tolled, Poirot clutched the letters, their words a map to Duval's motives. The merchant had tracked Anselm to prevent exposure, and the mill was their battleground. But was Anselm dead, or in hiding, like Marguerite? The warehouse in Liège beckoned, where Duval's trail might end. In the next chapter, we'll follow Poirot as he journeys to Liège, uncovering a confrontation that unveils the truth behind the silent cloister's bloodied mystery. Chapter 8. The Warehouse in Liège. The afternoon sun cast a warm glow over the Abbey of Saint-Benoît, its rays filtering through the cloister's arches and illuminating the flagstones where Brother Anselm's blood had stained the stone. Hercule Poirot, his satchel heavy with the incriminating letters from the scriptorium's locked box, proof of Henri Duval's fraud against Marguerite's family, stood at the Abbey's iron gate, his mind a whirlwind of deductions. The merchant's trail led to Liège, to a warehouse where the carter had dropped him, and Poirot knew he must follow it swiftly. Duval, with his fancy knife and tobacco-scented letters, had pursued Anselm to prevent the exposure of his crimes. and the Mills confrontation suggested a desperate act, with Captain Hastings at his side, his face a mix of excitement and apprehension. Poirot hailed a taxi from the village, the engine rumbling to life as they set off for Liège, the Belgian city of spires and secrets, where the mystery of the vanishing monk might finally unravel. The journey to Liège wound through picturesque countryside, rolling hills dotted with farmhouses and patches of forest giving way to the urban sprawl of the city. Poirot gazed out the window, his fingers drumming on his satchel, replaying the clues in his mind. The bloodied sandal, the cheap candle, the locket with Marguerite's photo, the diary's confessions, and now the letters detailing Duval's embezzlement, forged documents that had bankrupted Marguerite's father and driven her to seek justice. "Hastings, mon ami," Poirot said, breaking the silence. "This Duval is a man of cunning. He placed Anselm in the abbey not out of charity, but to silence him, watching from afar until Marguerite's arrival stirred the pot. The mill was his chance to end the threat." Hastings nodded, gripping the seat as the taxi bumped over cobbles. "But what of Anselm? If Duval attacked him, where's the body? And why the blood trail stopping at the gate?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "That, Hastings, is the elegance of the crime, or the deception. We shall see at the warehouse." Liège unfolded before them, its medieval architecture blending with modern bustle. The grand cathedral of St. Paul towering over narrow streets, the Meuse River glinting under bridges crowded with pedestrians and trams. The taxi dropped them at the city's edge, near the industrial district where warehouses lined the waterfront, their brick facades weathered by years of trade. The carter's description led them to a squat building marked Duval Imports, its doors padlocked and windows shuttered, a faint scent of tobacco lingering in the air. Poirot's moustache quivered as he examined the lock, scratched as if recently forced. "Someone has been here before us," he murmured, signalling Hastings to watch the alley while he picked the lock with a deft tool from his pocket, the mechanism clicking open with a soft snap. Inside, the warehouse was a cavern of crates and shadows, dust motes dancing in the slivers of light from high windows. Stacks of imported goods, silks from the East, spices from India, filled the space, but Poirot's keen eyes spotted disarray. Overturned boxes near a back office, papers scattered like fallen leaves. Hastings whispered, "Looks like a struggle, Poirot. Duval must have fled in a hurry." Poirot knelt among the papers, sifting through invoices and ledgers, his gloved hands careful. One document caught his eye, a forged deed mirroring those in Anselm's bundle, proving Duval's pattern of fraud. Another was a telegram, dated the night of Anselm's disappearance. "The monk is dealt with. Return to Liège. Sent from Saint-Benoît village unsigned, but the tobacco ash on it betrayed Duval's habit." Deeper in the office, behind a heavy desk, Poirot found a hidden safe, its door ajar as if abandoned mid-flight. Inside lay a bloodied handkerchief, monogrammed AV, Anselm's initials, and a small vial of red ink, the kind used in the scriptorium for manuscripts. Poirot's heart raced as he examined the vial, its label matching the abbey's supplies. "This ink," he said, holding it up to Hastings, "is not blood, but a clever substitute. The trail in the cloister was staged, Hastings. Anselm faked his disappearance, perhaps with Marguerite's help, to draw Duval out and expose him." Hastings' eyes widened. "So Anselm's alive, but the sandal, the struggle at the mill." Poirot nodded. "A ruse to make Duval believe he'd succeeded. Anselm cut himself lightly, used the ink for the trail, and hid, waiting for Duval to incriminate himself. Their search was interrupted by a creak at the warehouse door. A figure slipped in, cloaked and cautious. Poirot signalled Hastings to hide, and they watched as the man, tall, with a scar on his cheek, matching Brother Matthias's description of a turned-away visitor, rummaged through the desk. "Where is it?" he muttered, his voice rough with a Liège accent. Poirot stepped forward, his voice calm. "Monsieur Duval, I presume. Or should I say, The merchant who silences his past with knives and shadows. The man spun, his hand reaching for a pocket, but Hastings blocked the exit. Duval's face, lined with greed and fear, twisted in recognition. Poirot, how? Poirot held up the letters and vial. Your fraud is exposed, monsieur. Anselme or Antoine outwitted you. He staged his vanishing to lure you here, where your panic reveals all. Duval snarled, lunging for the safe, but Poirot was quicker, tripping him with his cane. As Hastings restrained him, Duval confessed in a torrent. Years ago he'd ruined Marguerite's family with forged deeds, and Anselme, as Antoine, had evidence. When Anselme fled to the Abbey, Duval paid to place him there, watching silently. Marguerite's search rekindled the threat, so Duval followed her to Saint-Benoît, confronting Anselme at the mill. But Anselme escaped, wounded but alive, and Duval, believing him dead, returned to Liège. I thought the blood was his end, Duval admitted, his voice breaking. But he's out there, with more proof. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And now, monsieur, the police will handle you. But first, where is Anselme? Duval shook his head, defiant. I don't know. He vanished like a ghost. As they waited for the authorities, summoned by a nearby phone, Poirot pondered the vial and handkerchief. Anselme had planned meticulously, using the Abbey's ink to fake a greater wound, slipping through the woods while Duval chased shadows. But why hide now with Duval caught? The warehouse's secrets had unveiled Duval's guilt, but Anselme's whereabouts remained a puzzle. His staged disappearance a masterstroke in a game of justice. Outside, as police led Duval away, the Meuse River flowed indifferently, its waters carrying the echoes of betrayal. Poirot, satchel in hand, turned to Hastings. We return to Saint-Benoît, mon ami. Anselme is close, waiting for the net to close. The journey back was tense, the countryside blurring as Poirot pieced the final threads. In the next chapter, we'll follow him as he returns to the Abbey, confronting the truth and revealing Anselme's fate in the silent cloister. Chapter 9. The Monk's Confession. The dusk settled over the Abbey of Saint-Benoît like a heavy cloak, casting the cloister in a twilight glow that mirrored the uncertainty gripping Hercule Poirot's mind. The warehouse in Liège had unveiled Henri Duval's guilt, his fraud, his pursuit of brother Anselme, and his desperate confrontation at the old mill. But the monk himself remained a ghost, his staged disappearance a clever ruse using red ink and a bloodied sandal. Poirot, clutching his satchel with the incriminating letters and the vial of ink, returned to the Abbey with Captain Hastings, the taxi's wheels crunching on the gravel path as the ancient walls loomed into view. Anselme, or Antoine Vasseur, was alive. Poirot was certain, hiding somewhere close, waiting for Duval's downfall to step out of the shadows. The key now was to find him, and Poirot suspected the Abbey's quiet corners held the final clue to the monk's whereabouts. Inside, the monks were gathered for vespers, their chants echoing through the chapel's stone arches. Poirot and Hastings slipped into the cloister, where the bloodstain from Anselme's sandal had long been scrubbed away, though its memory lingered. Poirot's sharp eyes scanned the familiar flagstones, pausing at the statue of Saint-Benoît, its serene gaze unchanged. Hastings, mon ami, he said, his voice low. Anselme planned his escape with precision, but he could not leave the Abbey without help. Someone here knows more. Perhaps Brother Luc, the gatekeeper, who saw him pacing, or Brother Jerome, who guarded the scriptorium's secrets. Hastings nodded, his breath visible in the cool air. But why stay hidden now? Duval's caught, the evidence is secure. What's he waiting for? Poirot decided to start with Brother Luc, whose nervous tick and evasive answers had caught his attention before. They found him in the gatehouse, polishing the heavy iron key with a rag, his broad shoulders hunched as if carrying a secret. Brother Luc, Poirot began, his tone disarming. You knew Anselme was troubled. Speaking of debts and forgiveness, did you help him the night he vanished? Perhaps opening the gate to let him slip away? Luke's hands froze, his tic twitching violently. I swore to say nothing, monsieur, he whispered, his eyes darting to the cloister. But Anselm, he came to me that night, wounded, begging me to unlock the gate. He said his life depended on it, that a man meant to kill him. Poirot's moustache quivered. And you let him out, oui? Where did he go? Luke's voice dropped to a murmur. To the hermit's cell, in the woods beyond the stream. It's abandoned, hidden. He said he'd wait there until it was safe. Poirot exchanged a glance with Hastings, who looked ready to bolt into the forest. Merci, brother Luke. You have done well to speak. Leaving the gatehouse, they headed for Father Dominic's study to confirm Luke's story. But the prior was in the chapel, so Poirot detoured to the scriptorium, hoping Brother Jerome might shed light on Anselm's allies. The room was empty, its desks silent under the fading light, but a faint noise, a rustle of paper, came from the storage alcove. Poirot crept forward, finding Jerome hastily tucking a letter into his robe. "Brother Jerome," Poirot said, startling him, "you seem anxious to hide something. A message from Anselm, perhaps?" Jerome's face flushed, his ink-stained fingers trembling. "It's nothing, monsieur, just a note about manuscripts." But Poirot's gaze was unrelenting, and Jerome crumbled. "Anselm gave it to me before he left, asked me to keep it safe. It's for Marguerite in case he didn't return." He handed over a folded paper, its seal broken, revealing Anselm's tight script. "Marguerite, the proof is with Poirot. Forgive me for running again. I'm safe, but I cannot face you yet." Poirot's heart quickened. This confirmed Anselm was alive, hiding in the hermit's cell, but ashamed to confront his past. With night falling, Poirot and Hastings ventured into the woods, guided by Luke's directions. The hermit's cell was a crumbling stone hut, overgrown with moss, its door barely visible in the moonlight. Poirot knocked softly, calling, "Antoine Vasseur, it is Hercule Poirot. Duval is in custody, your evidence secure. Come out, mon ami." A long silence followed. Then the door creaked open, revealing Anselm, his monk's robe tattered, his hand bandaged from the mill scuffle. His eyes, weary but relieved, met Poirot's. "I thought hiding was my only choice," he said, his voice hoarse. "Duval would have killed me to keep his secrets. I staged the blood, used the ink, to make him think I was gone." Anselm recounted his plan. After meeting Marguerite at the mill and giving her some letters, Duval attacked, grazing his hand with the knife. Anselm fled, using ink to extend the blood trail, and slipped through the gate with Luke's help, hiding in the cell while Marguerite carried the remaining evidence to safety. "I wanted justice for her family," he said, "but I fear Duval's reach, even in the Abbey." Poirot nodded, his voice gentle. "You have done well, Antoine. The police have Duval, and Marguerite is safe. Your courage has exposed him." Anselm's shoulders sagged, as if a weight had lifted, but his eyes held guilt for the chaos he'd caused. As they escorted Anselm back to the Abbey, the stars glittered above, the cloister's silence now one of resolution. Poirot knew Father Dominic would need to address Anselm's return, but the truth was out. The merchant's shadow banished. In the next chapter, we'll witness Poirot's final unravelling of the mystery as he confronts the Abbey with Anselm's story, tying together the threads of betrayal and redemption. Chapter 10. The Light of Truth. The dawn broke over the Abbey of Saint-Benoît with a serene clarity, the first rays of sunlight piercing the mist and bathing the ancient cloister in a golden glow. Hercule Poirot stood in the Abbey's courtyard, his polished shoes glinting against the dew-kissed flagstones, his satchel heavy with the evidence that had unravelled the mystery of Brother Anselm's disappearance. The letters exposing Henri Duval's fraud, the vial of red ink used to stage a vanishing, and the bloodied sandal that had sparked fear in the sacred halls. With Captain Hastings at his side, his face alight with relief at finding Anselm alive in the hermit's cell, Poirot prepared to address the monks and Father Dominic, ready to lay bare the truth of the silent cloister's shadows. Brother Anselm, now revealed as Antoine Vasseur, stood beside them, his tattered robe and bandaged hand a testament to his ordeal, his eyes weary but resolute. The abbey's bell tolled, summoning the monks to the chapel, but today it would host a reckoning, not a prayer. Poirot had requested a gathering in the chapel, its high arches and stained glass windows casting a solemn light over the assembled monks. Father Dominic stood at the altar, his stern face softened by the weight of recent events, while brothers Luke, Jerome, and Matthias, along with the others, filled the pews, their robes rustling as they whispered among themselves. Anselm, head bowed, stood near Poirot, who stepped forward, his voice clear and commanding despite his small stature. "Mes amis," he began, his moustache perfectly aligned, "the Abbey of Saint-Benoît is a place of peace, yet it has harboured a mystery, a monk's disappearance, a trail of blood, and a secret from a past life. Today, with the help of my little grey cells, we bring light to these shadows." He began with Anselm's history, painting a vivid picture of a young man named Antoine Vasseur from Liège, entangled with a merchant named Henri Duval, who had ruined Marguerite Dubois' family through forged deeds. Antoine, seeking atonement, became Brother Anselm, Poirot explained, holding up the locket with Marguerite's photograph. But his past followed him. Marguerite, seeking justice, tracked him here, demanding proof of Duval's crimes. Anselm, true to his old promise, found letters in the scriptorium's locked box, evidence of fraud hidden by Duval's influence as a benefactor. The monks murmured, their eyes darting to Anselm, who kept his gaze on the floor. Poirot produced the letters, their faded ink stark against the chapel's sanctity. Duval, fearing exposure, came to Saint-Benoît, his cigarette butts marking his presence at the old mill and in the woods. He confronted Anselm at the mill, where a struggle left Anselm wounded, only slightly, but enough to spill blood. He held up the bloodied handkerchief and the vial of red ink. Anselm, clever and desperate, used the abbey's ink to extend the blood trail, staging his disappearance to make Duval believe he was dead. With Brother Luke's help, he slipped through the gate, hiding in the hermit's cell, while Marguerite carried some evidence to safety. Brother Luke shifted, his tic twitching, but he nodded, confirming his role in unlocking the gate. Father Dominic's face tightened, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Anselm, you brought deception into our walls. Why not trust us with the truth?" Anselm lifted his head, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. "Father, I feared Duval's reach. He placed me here to silence me. And when Marguerite came, I knew he'd kill to protect his secrets. I staged my vanishing to draw him out, to ensure the letters reached the authorities." Poirot nodded, turning to the monks. "And it worked. In Liège, we found Duval in his warehouse, panicked by Anselm's death, with more forged documents and the knife that grazed Anselm's hand. He confessed, believing Anselm gone, but the monk outwitted him. Hastings, unable to contain himself, added, 'Jolly clever, really, faking a disappearance with ink and a sandal. Brilliant, if a bit theatrical.' Poirot shot him a look, but continued. The bloodied sandal, the torn robe, the cryptic words in Anselm's manuscript, sin, smudged in haste, were all part of his plan. The cigarette butts, the lavender-scented scarf, and Marguerite's letter tied Duval to the mill, where he thought he'd silenced his past. But Anselm, with Marguerite's courage, ensured justice. He turned to Father Dominic. "The police have Duval and Marguerite is safe, ready to testify. Anselm's deception, though unorthodox, was born of necessity." The chapel fell silent, the monks absorbing the tale of betrayal and redemption. Brother Jerome, his ink-stained hands clasped, spoke softly. "We judged Anselm too quickly, thinking him lost to sin. He protected us all. Brother Matthias, his eyes misty, nodded. His faith was tested, but he chose justice. Father Dominic stepped forward, placing a hand on Anselm's shoulder. You have much to atone for, Anselm, but you are welcome here, if you choose to stay. Anselm's eyes filled with tears, but he nodded, a weight lifting from his frame. Poirot gathered his satchel, his work complete. The silent cloister is silent no more, he said, his voice warm. Truth has a way of breaking through, even in the holiest of places. As he and Hastings left the chapel, the monks' chants resumed, a hymn of forgiveness echoing in the air. Outside, the abbey glowed under the morning sun, its shadows banished. Poirot turned to his audience, as if speaking to a camera. If you've enjoyed unraveling this tale of mystery and redemption, please like and subscribe. Your support means the world to us. In the next moment, as they walked toward the village, Poirot knew another puzzle awaited. But for now, the cloister was at peace.